All right, guys, welcome back.
Yeah.
We are home, and this is a special episode. We got another Westchester resident.
Shout out to the nine.
Yeah, for sure. So when I was at the State of the Union a few weeks ago, and shout out to Representative Underwood who took me to I was her guest at the State of the Union. Jamal Bowman, who's our congressman from our area where we from and where we currently live.
That's right.
His guest was Jonathan Alvarez.
That's right. Shout out to the brother.
And he introduced me. So every congressman and every congressperson and senator gets one guest to the State of the Union. So he brought you. He introduced me to you, and he told me a little about your story. Then we connected. Then we spoke again offline.
Facts.
Then we actually have a mutual acquaintance as well. Shout out to Ray Vaughn.
Boots.
Yeah,
Shout out to the brother.
Yeah, what up, Boots?
I ran into him, and he gave me some more background on you as well. So I thought it was a good story to tell as far as redemption, entrepreneurship, figuring out a landscape after coming home from being incarcerated, something that's extremely difficult. So it's another side of the story as far as financial literacy and business that I think a lot of people can relate to. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are, trying to figure it out. So thought it would be good to highlight your story. So first and foremost, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
Appreciate that. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, for sure. So,
absolutely.
All right. So let's get the backstory first. So you're from Yonkers.
Southside.
Originally.
Originally.
5 on the sawmill.
What part exactly?
South Broadway and Lawrence Street.
Okay. Yeah. Shout out.
Born and raised on that side.
Shout out to Yonkers.
It's like 3 landmarks. It's like the D-Block car wash, not the hand community center.
That's a fact.
What's the
square?
The square. And the square. We got to count the square.
Definitely a landmark.
So shout out to Yonkers. So okay, so you growing up in Yonkers, and I'll let you tell a story, but unfortunate situation happened, right? And you get incarcerated pretty much your whole entire 20s, from 17 to 30,
yeah,
right?
17 to 30.
And then you come home and you start a nonprofit organization, and it's designed to keep kids off the street, to prevent gang violence, to prevent violent crimes, right? So that's kind of the quick overview, but I want you to kind of really tell the story in detail.
No, for sure. So like you said, I went away when I was 17 for a violent crime. I was gang involved, right? I did nearly 13 years. When I came home, in fact, my interest was not in 2018. It wasn't the nonprofit lane. It was fashion, because what I studied for my undergrad. So like I tell most people, when I went away, I turned my story around by getting my education. And that's the key thing, right? Self-investment while doing all that time. I went in with a 10th grade education, came home with a bachelor's degree in social studies. But what I studied was fashion trends and urban poverty and understanding the social significance. So I came home with the desire to do fashion curation, right? Like I wanted to curate spaces to tell our story and why we wear what we wear in poor communities, right? So 2018, I applied to the new school, top elite fashion school in the U.S. I got awarded nearly a full scholarship, right? So it's really my re-entry experience that inspired the nonprofit work. My first year home, I'm still on parole. I'm living with my aunt. A lot of elements in the environment I'm in is toxic. Me struggling, trying to find my way, right? But I'm all preparing to get into the master's program. I'm serving tables in downtown in Yonkers in the restaurants, right? Like I'm doing everything to make it happen. Working for a congressman in Newburgh, traveling to Newburgh and to Yonkers. I'm doing all I can to stay out the streets and figure it out. I get into school 2019, top fashion school, just did 13 years, home 9 months at the time. And it was in that experience that kind of woke me up of what it's like to return home and not have certain things in place, even someone to help you, guide you along your journey. So I jumped right in. December 2019 is when I had what I call my first mental health breakdown, right? My first pitfall. And what I learned was I was too goal-focused and oriented. I never really understood the trauma that comes with after doing so much time. Mind you, 17 and 30, right? So now, dealing with that trauma, I felt, I realized I was working 2 jobs. I was working at a fashion production company called Spring Studios, where they launched New York Fashion Week. And I was working an odd job. I had to let the jobs go because I had to focus on school, right? But now I'm behind on school and now I'm broke. In that first semester, that's all that happened in 2.5 months. And I think I never acknowledged that, like I was moving too fast. So a lot of us know we come home want to play catch up, some of it in a negative way, some in a positive way. Mine was like trying to play catch up to get in position and like kind of gain some independence. But I skipped a couple steps, right? So 2019, I tell the story coming off the train, 14th Street, going to school, and I just started crying. Like straight breakdown. I called my brothers, you know what I'm saying? One of them is in the room, and in the group chat, like I let them know, like, yo, you know, I'm going through it. And each one came to my aid, like, yo, we here for you, bro, we got you. So I was advised to go see counseling. I withdrew from the master's program, and I learned to say, you know, yes to mental health and no to education, and start over in 2020. That experience, like the leader in me wanted to do more for people like myself who never had a support system. So me and my bro co-founder John Cabrera, a friend of mine for 30 years, you know, I was like, I want to organize a male support group called the You're Not Alone Brotherhood. In 2019-20, right in the new year, we started a first group, a bunch of men coming together to talk about the traumas that we deal with. Because most conversations around politics, music, you know, a bunch of fillers. I'm more about real talk. And that inspired me to go forward. I connected with the former superintendent, Dr. Casada of the school district. He connected me to my MBK, my brother's keeper, in 2020. And I did my first speaking engagement at Lincoln, at the Lancers, right?
Out the Lincoln.
2020, and I spoke, and that's a school that I got kicked out of at 15. So he was the principal that actually expelled me.
Really?
Word. So full circle, you know what I'm saying? It's full circle. I'm coming back for an opportunity. He seems I changed my life. And I spoke in front of a group of like 40 youth. And first time I learned how to tell my story, you know what I'm saying, in terms of what I've been through, gang culture, street culture, prison, and now post-release struggles. And it was in that moment, like, that I noticed that there's leaders missing like me in the community who was not coming back after so much time. And I realized having the support I had allowed me to make it to that point. And that was like the birth of 914. Me seeing the gap of brothers not coming, sisters coming home from prison, and not having somebody who walked that journey, who been there to say, yo, we got you. So the name of the support group was called the You're Not Alone Brotherhood. That's our like creed now, the You're Not Alone, 914 United. And in 4 years, we just blossomed, right? But you know, the movement kept coming we kept going until the pandemic hit, right? March 2020, right? So we already was doing the MBK work after my speech engagement. I'm touring all the schools before the school shut down. I'm telling my story. And then when the pandemic hit, we had to go virtual. So the MBK's, their mission is uplifting young men of color, providing mentorship. So that's where the mentoring element of the work we do now was developed. You know, I had 3 mentees at the time. They were all in school, giving them guidance. And then the pandemic hit. And then that's when we kind of just pivoted into doing COVID work in the community, helping other essential workers on the front line. And not for nothing, that's when we learned to organize and learn community work and becoming a 501c3 and building a nonprofit in a more structured, more formal way. I'll go on and on, but you know, basically that experience led me to where starting the movement.
So you said something very important, that on that journey, as you were going, you felt like you missed a few steps. And a lot of times returning citizens is like, there is no blueprint. Like what are some of those steps? Obviously you took some that were forward, but there was some that you missed. What are those steps that you realize now that this is how I probably should approach it when
a solid foundation, right? You know, I wasn't in a financial position. So like now I operate from like a needs assessment. Everything is strategic, right? If I want to, you know, achieve this goal, I got to think about the needs first, right? You know, there's like levels to it. So I think for me, I was trying to build my foundation, but then skip the step to getting into position. But I never had a solid foundation. You know, I wasn't financially independent, for example. I was saving up money with the hopes of starting school, not knowing what school was going to actually be like, right? Not knowing that trauma was going to hit me. So it was like not understanding the foundation is so important to actually grow something solid.
So, all right.
Full-time work, for example.
We talk about prison reform a lot, and most of the time that's through laws changing or probation and different things of that nature. But as far as prison reform, actually being able to adapt into society, right? That's something that is not talked about a lot. Like, talk about that for people that may not have ever experienced incarceration or don't know anybody that's incarcerated. Like, as far as you being incarcerated pretty much your first half of your adult life and then getting released into the world, how hard was that to adjust as far as, you know, having bills, credit, understanding how finances work, you know, trying to get an apartment and having a felony on your record, like, you know, talk about that aspect of it.
Nah, for sure. So even like opening my first bank account, right? So again, what we do with the work is provide somebody who knows how to take that person where they need to go. My best friend, John Cabrera, the co-founder, he was the one that took me to get my ID. He the one that took me to the bank account and say, oh, this is how you open up a bank account, right? You know, there's a lot that goes into like, where do you want to park your finances? And like some of us don't have that one person who's going to take time out their busy day to walk you through. So like, that's where the gap is at, right? With people who want to be in that gap, taking someone who don't know where to go, but they got to learn how to park their money, right? Taking them physically, just being that guy to them, right? I had that. The system is, you know, the reentry landscape, what you're talking about in terms of when people come home and what's set in place. There's a lot of lack specifically in Westchester, and that's why our work is, when people talk about reentry, we say it's not really when the first day that they come home. It's actually the first day they arrested, right? Reentry starts when they're inside. So our work, to speak on the financial education and credit building, right? We actually host a financial education program in the county jail. We did it in Woodfield Detention Center as well, right? So like our program its core base is mentorship, but we provide career readiness, financial education, and now recently digital equity is teaching people how to navigate tech, right? So when we go into these institutions like Westchester County Jail, we're talking about life skills, right? How to communicate, right? We're talking about how to develop action plans for yourself, goal setting, right? But these kids like money. They like to understand numbers. So now we launched an 8-week program in the county jail that took them all the way from the banking essentials to credit building, right? With other people who are specialists in this field, right? And all the way to entrepreneurship, like how to start an LLC. A lot of them want to do LLCs and build businesses, but there's so much dynamics to that, right? Mm-hmm. So we had workshops teaching them that, with the hope that when they return home, they have some foundation and also someone to call and say, yo, now I'm ready to apply what I was just taught inside, right? So that aspect, when we think about prison reform, I think about how to change the landscape inside of the institutions so that when they return home, that they better equipped. You know, I was recently appointed by Andrea Stewart Cousins to sit on the New York State Prison Education Committee. One of my long-term goals is to change the landscape for state prisoners, right? It's having what we call credible messengers like myself, someone who navigated the criminal legal system and is using that lived experience to, you know, leverage for impact, right? Going into the institutions and shaping what program looks like in the state, because we can have curriculum like financial education, teaching people how to build budgets using their commissary money, right? Like that's what we was doing in the county, giving them real applicable tools so that when they come home, they at least one step ahead. Mm-hmm. Which ironically is one of the name of our programs, is one step ahead, right? So my aspect of prison reform, because it's so broad, right? It's really just changing what education and programming looks like inside of the institution so that when they return home, they could be one step ahead than I was.
What's the current state of it though? Like, cause like, you know, a lot of, I know friends that was in states and feds, and a lot of stories that I hear is just like gang fights, just survival. A lot of people's on drugs. I don't hear a lot of stories of like, the whole point of jail should be so you can become a better person. I know there are programs in jail, but from your vantage point, what is it as far as the day-to-day for a prisoner to go through? Because it's like, I look at it like a lot of people don't, it gets lost in translation. Like people's like, okay, you do something bad, you get locked up, and then you just go to jail for a long period of time. But if it's supposed to rehabilitate somebody, there should be mental health programs, there should be financial literacy programs, there should be like a boot camp to stay in shape, all kinds of stuff. And I just feel like from the people that I'm hearing stories from, it's just a lot of free time, or it's time that you can kind of just navigate and just do the same thing you was doing on the street. That's not beneficial, right? And then this is why a lot of people fall into the trap of becoming career criminals and career inmates, right? So like, speak on that aspect of it.
On like the day-to-day and what it looks like inside,
yeah.
In terms of, so just so you know, its mission statement, they not true to its mission statement, right? It's corrections, right? It's not correcting nothing, right? It's actually corrupting. You know, the rehabilitation component sounds good in theory, but practice, that's not what's happening. But what is happening is that you do have certain movements that, just like mine, is looking outside into the system saying this is what's missing, and they're going to fill in that gap. So I would have to shout out the college program I graduated from, right? Bard Prison Initiative, right? This is a program providing free liberal arts education for brothers inside, sisters inside, right? They in like.
Was that always there?
No, because after '94, with the Pell Grants taken away, right?
Well, degrees in
Yeah,
prison, right?
yeah, exactly, right. That wasn't available. So, and I'm gonna get to the day-to-day stuff too to talk about. But with elements like BPI, right, which is is privately funded. This is a top liberal arts school in the U.S. It costs $250,000 to educate one person, right? And they getting this money for free. They done graduated over 1,000 incarcerated learners, what we call them, right? That program, it being in place, is really an exposure for us to know that, oh, it's a possibility, right? Some places don't have that program. So what it looks like is it has to be really where you at as a person. And that's the one thing I learned. I went in at 17. I had my pitfalls. I did box time, right? But I always was a curious learner. I like to read, you know what I'm saying? And at the time I was married. I was married in prison young. I got married at 18. And my wife at the time, she was in college, graduated early, 2 jobs, right? She was shaking. So I was motivated to like match energy. So I wanted to get my GED. So everything was like self-initiation, right? Like if you want to go, you have to go after it. It's there. The GED program is there. But are they really gonna help you pass? It's really up to you. Then you have like outside programs like PACE, HIV awareness programs, alternative violence programs. They're there. It's good for your learning and being around brothers like I was who are learners and want to build. So that like once those safe spaces are available, it's really up to you to enter them because they're available for all, right? The mandated programs is GED because and vocation. The vocation, they have electric, heating and plumbing.
You gotta learn a skill.
Yeah, but it's not effective, right? Like
Right.
you go to those programs, you could just attend and pretend, and you're literally passing, right? You're satisfying for the state. The state, it's what is missing is intentionality, right? Because if it's intentional, it's gonna create spaces where people are not just gonna want to come learn, but they really gonna learn, right? So everything is really upon you. So on a day-to-day, to answer your question directly, right, it's broken up in 3 modules, at least in the state. You got the morning, afternoon, and nighttime module. Each module has a rec time available, right? You can either go to the rec or you could go to school, stay in your cell and read, or go to the law library, right? So it's really where your mind is at. And I think early on, you know, shout out to a lot of my big bros that were old school gangsters that educated themselves and transformed their lives, right? They made education look good for me, right? They still swagger, they still move in the yard, they well respected, but they in school. And I think that exposure for me made me realize like, yo, that's the route I want to be. So my day-to-day was like, I'm going to divide my 3 modules up into ways that's going to help me. Wow, there's a lot going on. There's wars going on, stabbings, knife fights, police, everything's still happening. You just got to understand where your role is in this, right? There was 5 things I was told to stay away from in prison. You know what I'm saying? Don't interact with police, no telling, don't play with the mooks, no gang violence, right? And don't sell drugs. Actually, there's 6, and don't gamble. Those 6 things is gonna lead to one outcome, right? Yeah. So me, I'm like, I'm gonna work out and keep my head in the books and just move militant, right? So the way I view my time was like investment into time and like what I really wanted to be. Early on, I got told on my case, right? 5 people told on me. So I already knew the streets is not an option, right? Whatever I thought was real is not real for me no more, right? So I started to look at my time like, God damn, I got 13 years to do, like, you know, and I made some mistakes. I went to the box and all that, trying to dibble and dabble. And it was in that box time that really also woke me up like, yo, you haven't still learned, right? You now in solitary confinement, right? You know, the shoe they call it or whatnot. And you know, just having a lot of time to myself made me start to see, I'm gonna break my days up like this. You know what I'm saying? When I'm going to the yard, I'm gonna go call my people on the phone, I'm gonna hit the shack and I'm gonna go mingle with the bros that are like-minded. And from that structure, it's like, it looks different for everybody. You know what I'm saying? Some brothers is coming out, they on the phone all day. Some brothers is working out all day, or they in the corner with their bros all day, politicking, doing what they do, right? So with the limited programming that's accessible, it's really up to you to make it work for you. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's why they say don't do the time. No, don't let the time do you. You do the time. You know what I'm saying? It's really like kind of like giving you the position to be active with it. Because you got to do something for 20 years and then get their GED. Then you got to do something for 20 years, got their master's education, right? So it's really about what you really want to come out of it.
So what it was, I mean, it sounds like you had people to look up to in there, right? What was the foundation, or was there a foundation on the outside? Because a lot of times there's families that are affected by you going to jail. Your family's affected.
100.
You said that obviously your man is here, but what was that foundation like? When you go in, everybody's like, oh, setting you, writing you, but as time goes on and progresses, we see that all the time. Like, it's almost like a forgotten family member. What was that like for you?
Yeah, no, I have to shout out my ex-wife on that one, right? You know, she was the most consistent. I had consistency in some family members, like my brother that was here and others, but you know, she was the one kicking down the door when I was 5 hours away, right? She's the one that's sending me cards, letters every week, right? So unfortunately, what you learn when you go away is that family gonna love you, but they struggling too. You know what I'm saying? And like you just came a whole nother bill that they didn't ask for. Right? So like you learn that like you become a liability. Right. So like, you know, it's really when you have a mom or father in position, and usually it's the mom that's knocking down those doors. So my foundation was I had my aunt, you know, two of my aunts that was, you know, shouting me out. Some family members checking for me here and there. You know what I'm saying? Some of my peoples and my bros is coming to check me. But my most consistent support for like my first 5 to 7 years was my ex-wife, to be honest. You know what I mean? And I was fortunate to have that. So everybody's foundation looks different too, right? Like you might go to the visit room and you see somebody, his mom, brother, cousins, and aunt is there every week, right? Also, it depends where you at. When I was in Sing Sing, that's what, 20 minutes away from the town, right? So I'm getting more visits, right, than I was when I was in Coxsackie or Comstock. So it's like really about positioning. I think my last 3 years is when I started seeing my most support. But also I was also sending like, you know, evidence of my growth. I was graduating, I'm getting my degree now. I'm inviting my folks to come into the institution, to come to my graduation. So it's like everything now they hear of me is something positive, which I think encourage a lot of people to like really believe in me. You know what I'm saying? So, but that's kind of relative. But if we do look at it in a general sense, the foundation for everybody's different.
So when you start your nonprofit, right, what was the steps to actually get that off the ground and up and running?
As a formal nonprofit or just like even starting it? Like,
Both.
yeah, yeah.
But definitely the formal side. I want to talk about that.
No, for sure, for sure. So, basically for us, again, it was just organizing. So like you kind of got to market the work unpaid and just do the work. You're in the community doing it, until, you know, actually a former county legislator was like, yo, are you guys a 501c3? I didn't know what a 501c3 was. And for those who don't know, that's the actual nonprofit tax bracket where you're tax exempt, right? That's when you become an actual public charity identified by the federal government that you are a nonprofit. You could receive money, people could donate, and it's a tax write-off. We weren't even that. We were just organizing. Like we was leading with the heart, right? So we out in the community, we putting on. That was the first question I got that made me think about like, yo, I have to organize. The second question was from who's the current mayor of Mount Vernon. We did a food drive with her, and she's like, yo, who are y'all? Like, you know what I mean? Y'all out here putting on, but who are y'all? And we have no real organized answer. So it was me again, like, nah, we got to get it together, like, you know. And then I started thinking about the name, you know what I mean? That's when 914 United kind of like started to come about, and I was fortunate too. So like at the same time that we doing this organizing work, one of my board members now, one of my bros from high school, Lamont Badru, he was the current executive director of his own nonprofit in Yonkers. So he was the one that actually like helped me, sat me down and like, yo, this is how you become a 501c3. And he took me to the website, right? And legit sent me the link, and it's a step-by-step. Right? Some people could hire Zoom. I mean, what's that called? The
Legal Zoom?
Legal Zoom, right? To do all of that. But I legit took it, mind you, everybody's at home, right? It's shut down. So I had all the time in the world, and I just took the steps. And then we did the New York tax exempt to be like, to be exempt in the sales for New York, any purchases. We did that process. And then after that was just about your brand, right? Because now you're like on documentation, you are a nonprofit, but now how do you build your brand? Mm-hmm. And that's what something I just learned along the way. And what helped was that, you know, being a formerly incarcerated, you know, person taking a leadership role in the community, I think that was like kind of seen as one of one. And that's how we were getting called, right? My first call was to speak at a Black Lives Matter rally after George Floyd was, you know, unjustifiably killed. And I spoke in front of a community of like 800 white folks in Hastings for like 5 minutes. And I was talking about that issue, and we raised $5,000. Right, and that took that 5,000 and put it back into the business, right? And I had to develop a website. You know, from there. Now I'm thinking about the marketing part of it. I hired a contractor in Fiverr, and I'm working with this dude from Bangladesh trying to figure out how to, you know, organize and build the website. And then I got another call, Bronxville. Now these are like affluent communities. They starting to hear about this individual in this movement, and so it was like we became formalized by becoming a 501c3, but like what really catapulted the movement was the eyes that were on us and then the opportunities that we took. And each opportunity was like training ground for me. Because after the Bronxville speech, a real wealthy lady I didn't know was wealthy was like, yo, who's your board of directors? How's your finance? I'm lost, right? I don't understand the full dynamics. So language, I'm like, it's a new language for me. So now it makes me pivot, go back to Lamont, like, yo, how do we set this up? So it was like we kind of put the cart before the horse in a way, right? Like we kind of like jumped in and did the work, led by the heart, and then we had to kind of dial back and then organize, and then one of the things that really, really helped me was, knowing that the work I wanted to do was around gun violence prevention and positive youth development. I was looking for a job in that industry, right? So I applied for Yonkers Family YMCA, but with the intent of it being my training ground. Like, this is a nonprofit business. Now I'm going to learn nonprofit business by working for a nonprofit business. And then I got a kind of double reward where the nonprofit that I was working for is funded by a state agency. So now I'm getting experiences with a state agency, right, which is a whole nother bureaucratic structure. That looks different, right? Protocol, hierarchy, relationships, how information is shared. So I'm learning things in real time at my job. But that was my intent. I parked myself there with the intent of and then I'm still building the nonprofit. We still organizing. I actually got my first contract through all those movements and meeting people during COVID. I got connected to who was the former deputy commissioner, Louis Molina. He's now the deputy, deputy of New York City. I forgot his position, but he's under Eric Adams now. And he got me my first contract working inside the county jail. Right. So now I'm going inside the institution and I'm using my hourly contract money to run my programs in there. And that's when everything starts to come full circle. So now I'm within the institution. I'm seeing what's missing. I'm working for the nonprofit. I'm learning what's needed. Right. And I'm also doing my research on the side, understanding the dynamics I got to pour into the nonprofit business. So it's kind of like simultaneously 3 moving parts that helped us organize and become officially a business entity.
Man, you're building a plane and flying the plane at the same time. So this is interesting because as you were speaking and you're talking about branding and marketing, I'm thinking to myself, 13 years, if I go back, social media is not even, Facebook is probably around before you get locked up.
Yeah, I think MySpace.
MySpace? Is it MySpace?
It was MySpace.
It's MySpace, right? Facebook's probably maybe only for college students at the time. You come home and the landscape is completely different.
100%.
What was that like studying social media, right? Because now it's Snapchat, it's Instagram, it's all these apps, and you're like, I can imagine what that's like. Like, this is a whole new world.
Yeah, no, for sure. On a personal level, my people's taught me, what not to post and to post. Like, I was posting stuff I shouldn't be posting. Like, I got my ID. So think about it. I'm so excited I got my first state ID. And I post on the gram and bro like, yo, bro, take that down. You got your address on there. So we don't understand the dynamics of who's watching. So my peoples, every time I will post something that's like the do's and don'ts, they'll pull me up and teach me informally, right? Also women too, right? But on a personal level, when it comes to the branding part, like, I'm not a social media expert, right? So like, I always lean on the other experts in the field. And sometimes we have volunteers or we have an intern. Like, currently we have an intern now that's helping us with our marketing and branding, or people who we contract to come help us with certain projects. So that's how we've been able to elevate our marketing. We're trying to enhance the website now. It looks pretty good compared to what it was. But leaning on, other experts, like I'm a big believer in delegation, right? Like, I can't do it all, right? Like, I'm the visionary, I'm a strategic planner, but delegating requires finding the right human resources, you know what I'm saying? And then bringing them in, and then hopefully they can push your vision along. So that's how I kind of like over time. I just opened up a TikTok, right? Trying to do my own thing with my other page that I got, and it's tough. It's a lot of like, it's changing too fast. Word.
So as far as a nonprofit, the business model behind nonprofit, you still get to make money though, right? Like, you still got to live, right?
Of course.
So how does that work? Because people hear the word nonprofit and it's like, okay, everything, it's like, it's just a charity. Everything that comes in goes out, but it's still a business.
100%.
So
yeah.
Explain that like, it's easy to explain a for-profit organization. Everybody knows that. Mm-hmm. But the nonprofit, I think it's interesting that, like, it's a nonprofit, but it's still a business at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. So the business part of it, for the viewers, right? It's about like the way it's broken up in its taxes, right? Like, the entities is about the taxes is different, right? The way it's broken up. The structure is the same, just a different market, right? So the for-profit, I have to say that you're selling a good to make a profit, right? I sell you this candy bar, I make money off that candy bar. The nonprofit is about providing a service that's not being sold. I'm not selling you my financial literacy program. I'm not selling you my mentorship, right? You're in the program for free, but it's funded by, that could be a diverse pool, right? So we have government funding, right? Primarily, a lot of nonprofits are funded by government. And interestingly enough, you don't want to be funded by government, right? Because it's not guaranteed. Political shift happen, you lose that money. You have private donors, people who own companies, people who are well wealthy that love the cause you're doing. They want to donate, contribute. There's a diverse corporate, right? Fundraisers, crowdfunding. So all of that money really goes towards your budget. The same way a for-profit is set up, right? Everyone has expenses, right? You got rent, you got utilities, you got salary. That's where the money comes in. So I'm salaried as a CEO of my company, right? I started off unpaid. Right, and that's the part with the nonprofit, like some businesses too, that you have to start unpaid, build it. And the way we grew was uniquely because we started like as contractors, me and my team, right? Because once I got 2 or 3 brothers to join the movement that came home, right? Half my team got over 110 years in prison, FYI. Like we all came from the same Fed, state, and county. So they all love the noble movement. They jump on board. So what happened was people starting to see us and they're like, yo, can you run this program? Our first program was manhood, what was it called? The manhood training, right? It was an 8-week program and it was focused on adulthood and life skills and communications. And we went into the youth shelter of Mount Vernon. You know, shout out to the youth shelter. They gave us one of our first contracts to run program. That's how we started, right? What they paying for the program, X amount of money. All right, you come run work. You do 2 workshops. I pay for those 2 workshops. And we just started like building financial systems based on contracts. Then it got a little deeper when grants come in. So you get a grant from a government and they're like, hey, you get this X amount of money. And this particular first experience, it was a reimbursement grant. So you had to spend the money in order to get it back, right? So all of that taught me how to do budgets, spreadsheets, right? Like from the very beginning. And it kind of worked out because it wasn't, I turned down a lot of money, by the way, right? In the early parts of my career because I didn't want to do too much and then not be able to have the infrastructure to maintain it. You'll collapse like that. So I took each opportunity intentionally if it was aligned with my values and my mission, which is very important with the business and nonprofit. Can't chase the money, got to chase the mission. Because sometimes the dollar is tied to somebody who's not aligned with your mission or your values. And a lot of nonprofits go wrong with that. They looking at the dollars they need it for expenses, and then they, wrap themselves up, and then they can't produce. In our case, it was like we kind of like started to not put the cart before the horse. We started walking. We crawled. Now we're walking, and then we started slowly running. And what the nonprofit game was just understanding how to diversify your income. Right? Diversify your portfolio, right? How to get corporate funders, how to get foundation money, how to get, crowdfunding, fundraisers money, how to get government money. And then looking at that money, the money's coming in, tying it to the budget. And that's where salaries, insurance, your utilities, anything that you have as an expense for your nonprofit. Hope I kind of answered that.
How, you said you had to, as a CEO, did you build the board of directors? How did you go about choosing that? And then you said that obviously the team has all been incarcerated. How you go about selecting who's going to be a good fit to now join you on this mission?
I know, for sure. For the board of directors, it started with Lamont Badru, right? He was our first fiscal sponsor. So that check that we got for $5,000, we couldn't take it because we wasn't a 501c3 yet. So fiscal sponsors are like other more established nonprofits that'll take that money, pass it through their bank account to you. Because then that check, the person who wrote the check to that, it went to a nonprofit, right? It had to be a 501c3. So him being our fiscal sponsor and being somebody that was, helping us build the business, he was our first board member, right? And then we, at the time we were selecting people who was helping us on the ground, but it was like, I try to get people who are either an expert in different spaces, whether in education, whether in fundraising, right? Whether it's marketing, right? Operations, to contribute and pour back down into the organization. But it never works like that. You find people that's dedicated and they're too busy. They got too many kids or with a family level, so they can't contribute. So we revamped the board in 2022, going into 2023. And one person who's still, we have actually, there's 5 board members right now. Me, I'm the president. The co-founder is the board treasurer. Then we have an advisor and 2 secretaries. And the other 2, besides Lamont, we met them through just networking. And they had the skill set that we needed, which is understanding nonprofit business, understanding operations, right? Other one worked in correctional facilities. She understand program and leadership development. So we started to select people based on like how are they tied to the mission and what do they bring to the table. And right now, with that small team, we're starting over because we're literally formalizing the board process on what recruitment strategy looks like, right? We had to enhance our bylaws, right? The bylaws is the governance structure of the nonprofit. We're literally working with 3 different law firms to tighten up some of the back end documentation, such as the bylaws. And that bylaws is going to dictate how we recruit new board members. So while that's being developed by a legal consultant firm, we're working with the board to make sure our strategy is in line with the bylaws. And it's really, you want to target people who's going to bring to the organization. They're volunteering their time, but you want people who's going to bring in money, bring in resources, bring in connections, and also information, right? So we're still in that development phase. When it came to the team, it happened through me knowing individuals from serving time with them, and them returning home and reaching out, asking for the opportunity, and then it just kind of working out at the right time, right? That was like an unstructured way that we recruited, of course, with intention, right? Like, now the whole team is formerly incarcerated, only half the team. We have one woman on our team that's been impacted by the system indirectly, that got, different careers that contribute to the movement. But now we have actually HR department is in now. We're developing an HR system where we're doing onboarding more formal and more corporate. But there's a caveat that we are keeping with the organization, and that's the voting process. So I like member-led organizations, right, where my team has a say-so on how certain things process, right? So one of the last two members we had, we did a panel discussion. Right. So, and this somebody I was up north with, this master grad, bilingual, solid brother, well intellectual. He brought so much to the table, but I knew he just came home. We got to kind of groom him. And that's how we started to do it. We like, here's take an opportunity at Woodfield. They'll build their like kind of experiences working with the population. We kind of observe them. We put them in spaces to kind of get them a job with the team. And then we like, yo, this person's dedicated. This person actually brings a lot to the table, and they bring diversity. That's the other key, diversity, right? So then from there, if we feel like, we want to vote them in, we'll do a panel meeting with the person, and I'll have the whole team. Could be a little intimidating, but it's more like just really interviewing you about your interest in this movement, right? Because we don't call it a nonprofit or a company or a job. We a movement. So there's, company values and cultures that we have to talk about, and how do you like assimilate into that is what we try to figure out. And fortunately, we have a team of 13 right now. Again, I said half my team did a lot of time. 5 of them have former gang experience, from Crips, Bloods, Latin, Kingston, and Thaddeus to, Crips, Bloods. So like they all were gang leaders in their own way. So now they use that to go back into the institutions, working with the young kids who are gang banging. So the diversity kind of worked out, but the cherry picking comes in with who are we bringing in and why. And now we're just going to implement the more like formal process of it, because you need an HR. I had to remove myself from also the interviewing process just to some degree to offset any liabilities. You know what I'm saying? So it's more member-led, but now we're bringing in more corporate structure.
So you said as far as like nonprofit, the lifeline is fundraising, right? You have to be able to get money. And you said government is not the best source to get money, so it's private donors. But that's also very challenging, right? To kind of like always, it's not guaranteed either that you're gonna get a stream. So how has it been for you as far as fundraising? What are some challenges and what are some best practices that you learned?
For sure. So right now we have a strategy. So I started implementing strategic planning, right? The strategic plan, like I said earlier, is based on your needs assessment, right? So we look at what do we need in the organization, and then, okay, we need this, and how are we going to get it, right? So what we did was this year we have 3 approaches. So we have a grant writer that we contract. So this grant writer spends time in the library because they have a source called Foundational Directory, and it's a free database that tells you where all the grants are at. Companies pay for that, but at the library it's for free, right? So he'll spend hours there and research and finding grants that align with our mission. He'll present it to me and say, yo, this is a good grant to go after. We'll have several meetings on it, talking about budgets, how's it gonna align with my current mission and budget, and then he's going after them, right? So that's one approach. The other approach is more like a traditional model, corporate outreach, right? So I was fortunate through one of my donors. So we have some secure donors from last year that gave us a lot of money. He gave me a list of like over 500 companies throughout the U.S. worth up to $7 billion, right? His company is based on cold calling. That's what we're doing, right? We have a team. My team is dedicated some of their hours a week to cold calling those companies to introduce us, share our mission, and hopefully build relationships. So when it comes to money and outreach, it's about relationship building, as y'all know, right? So that's one approach that we want to measure too, to see if this is even effective. Is it a waste of time? Is it working? So we're doing that to raise money, and then crowdfunding, right, is another thing through online campaigns, social media, right, GoFundMe and things like that for specific things. And then what we did last year, which was really, really interesting, it was our first one, which was our first fundraiser gala, right? The goal was $50,000. We walked away with $68,000 in the first night. You know, shout out to Styles P. He came as a guest speaker. We had 432 people in the building. First fundraiser, right? And that's how you raise money. You sell tickets, you get a venue space, right? You market the tickets, you use the money for not profit, but to invest back into the company. The money that we raised for that fundraiser, the goal was our first office, and we just signed the commercial lease in February, and we finally moved in and up and running. So those are the ways in which now you have to think about getting money for the nonprofit, because the goal for every nonprofit is to try to secure consistent donors. Even if one person give me 500 a year, one person give me 50,000 a year.
Count on that.
You got to count all of that money, right? While still going after grants, you still need government funding, right? And then what kind of put me in position was a unique opportunity. So Executive Order 211 by Governor Hochul, it was announced in 2022 as a result of gun violence. So a lot of money. GVP is a buzzword right now, gun violence prevention, right? A lot of people going after it. That money was a lot of money. About $20 million was poured into an initiative called Project Rise. So Project Rise was a new approach to funding nonprofits from the state. It was never done this way, right? Where they was giving you the money up front, right? So we applied, we got accepted. We were like one of like 5 nonprofits in Yonkers that got it. And we got a nice chunk, which played a major role in me going full time, right? So now we got part-time staff members. I'm a full-time staff member. I got volunteers, and I got paid per diem. So that's as I need them, right? You go into a per contract. So we've diversified our money by using the state money, the contract money, the crowdfunding, the fundraiser, to now pay all the stuff that we need for the company.
So let me ask you a question. So it's like, is there like a test or like a limit? Like, is there a rule? Because let's say hypothetically I have a nonprofit. I raise $5 million, right? I have to use, because like somebody could just deposit that in their bank account, right? So it's like, is there a rule to be like, okay, if 80% of the money that you raise, you have to deploy in the course of 18 months? Like, how do they track that?
Yeah, no. So when you do your own fundraiser, you determine that, right? Unless a donor that's giving you X amount of money says this money's for this. So the donor could determine, like, this is for your rent only. You can't spend this on program expenses, for example, or you can't spend it on food for the office, right? So that's how one stipulation comes in. With the project, like when it comes to state funding, it's very controlling, right? You have a budget, a proposed budget, that you have to actually adhere to, right? So that money's controlled, and the timeline that you said you're gonna spend this money, they're monitoring, like whatever the case is. When you do your own fundraiser, like, you gotta be authentic to your supporters, right? Our goal was an office space, right? So when we got the money, right, we didn't have no stipulations like, you gotta spend this money on but we like, nah, y'all helped us raise money for the location. We're gonna get the location because we actually needed the location, right? So the stipulation varied depending on the grant that you're going after, right? Some grants are unrestricted. So shout out to Jeff Bezos' wife. Hopefully she sees this, man. She's been running around dumping millions of dollars into nonprofits unrestrictedly though. Yeah. Like unrestricted is like, yo, do what you need to do with it. There's no police reporting on it, right? Like that's a nonprofit's dream, So
that was she just announced that like $6 billion.
She's putting on right now.
I think New York State was the first place she looked first. And I think she's looking for like some crazy number of nonprofits.
And her process is hard to even find. They have to find you. So hopefully they find 914 United. You know what I mean? Right. But no, for sure. But the unrestricted comes from noble individuals with a lot of money. That's like, yo, I love what you're doing. We trust your work. But this is something good for all business owners, right? Your finances have to be in order, right? Like part of what got us the location, part of what got us into a lot of these deals. Grant providers, they want to see your finances sometimes, right? There's something called GodStar. They have the IRS website that they go look at and check how much went to program and how much went to salaries, right? Some of them care about those like little details, but your books, your financial story is your engine for the organization, specifically for a nonprofit, because people are giving you money, right? So like what we've been working on, which is a financial project, is getting audit ready. That's what we call it, right? Getting audit ready, making sure that when any funder, hopefully real wealthy funder, wants to see our financial story, it aligns, right? There's no disconnect. So that's
So that's what I'm getting at. So, all right, you audit ready. So if somebody wants to pull your records, they can see, okay, this amount of money went here, this amount of money went here.
Exactly.
So if you're doing due diligence, even for the public to know, like if they want to give money to a nonprofit, but they're not sure about if the money's actually going to go to help people, like they can actually look to see financial records.
Yeah, the IRS, if not the IRS, there's something called GodStar. So GodStar has like certain seals, like platinum, gold, bronze. The more transparent you are on GodStar, the higher the seal you get. So if you show them like your breakdown of your board, the ethnical breakdown, who you serve, your team, your finances, you gotta publish your 1090, your 990s every year. You have to publish that, right? So they can see your finances, so that and if they don't. Like I had a funder who, shout out to Bronx Rotary Club, they was on it. Like, look at your finances. Let me see what this, why you don't have this on GodStar? It was some like steps that we overlooked, and he was like intentional, and he's like, yo, you guys are doing the right thing. So once you build that trust with your finances, everything else is like just,
What are some of the biggest challenges? Obviously, the money, raising the money, figuring out how to get it. But what are some of those challenges that people who are not familiar with the space, what are things that they should know that you face, right? Like that is something that somebody put you on. What are some other challenges if we get into the space?
The politics, right? The politics is tough, right? And I just want to touch on something you asked in the answer to the challenging part, right? So me being a full-time CEO, right? Just to talk about the executive 211, they're talking about taking that off the table, right? So imagine a fund is like, here for 3 years, you good. And your first year, they like, oh, hold on, some political things are going on. You got to take it off the table. Now I got to think about how I'm going to cover my salary. Now I got to like pivot and I got to work overtime because, June come, I might not have a salary, right? So those challenges is about having a strategy in place to pivot the things that you don't see. And that's always hard, right? But there's many challenges with this work when it comes to fundraising. It's about how you build relationships and with who. So that's the political part of it, right? Like, there's campaign season. So even like some partners of mine that I really jive with, politically, I can't take open stances with you because the 501c3 guidelines is that if I endorse a politician, we get dissolved, right? And what does endorsement look like? It could be them taking your swag and posting on their page that they was at your event. It could be you taking a picture with them and it's, framed a certain way. So you have to be real careful, right? So, and then it's like a lot of the challenge you see is that you cannot separate community service from the political sphere. They go hand in hand. So now you got to deal with politicians who really don't believe in what you believe in, right? And that's some of the things I'm working on, like emotional intelligence, right? Like how to navigate these spaces, because I got that rebel in me, but I'm also going through refinement. I ain't got it all figured out. And there's times that I'm in a space and it's like, I really want to talk how I feel, but I can't. And leadership is about your brand ambassadorship, right? Like, what are you representing online and offline? Because people are watching, and so those challenges about policing yourself, being careful where you hanging out at, how you moving offline and online, but who you really deal with, because your brand can be separate from who you are. You know what I'm saying? So if, again, having to navigate those, like even now I'm doing my grand opening for the 914 space, and I'm like, who do I invite, right? Like it gets tricky because you don't want to feel like you're showing favoritism to one politician over another, because that might just be you got a close relationship with this person, but they don't understand that because they run against each other. So now if he or she gets a position, they like, yeah, we action you out of this money that we, you could have had you voted for us or you would have showed the support. So like being intentional with who you support and how you support, which leads to another problem and challenge, is how do you focus on internally and externally? The internal part of the organization, learning finance management, learning how to manage a team as you grow, learning how to manage new systems that you need, HR, consultants, learning all of that. And then the external pressures of, yo, we had this event, can you come support? Oh, hey, can you do this? Or we want to do a collaboration. Or can you come to this? Like, it's a lot of like just being pulled tug of war from two different directions, and those challenges are very exhausting, but I think if you stay true to your needs, right, and your mission, everything else is going to follow.
What about the challenge of you alluded to emotional intelligence? You're a full-time entrepreneur. you're leading an organization, but you also have a personal side, right? So like, how are you managing that? I know you mentioned therapy. Is that something that goes on a continuing basis? Like, how are you managing this? Because it's new,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
For a lot of people, entrepreneurship is new,
for sure.
and there's no book on how to handle it, right? There's ups and downs. How are you managing through it?
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, I'm literally seeing therapy, right? Every Monday evening. I got a good brother that, gives me great perspective on my life. So therapy is one of my outlets. Also a lot of trainings, right? Even for me and my team, we actually are implementing, it's something that we do for the youth when they're in distress. We're doing something for the team, right? To like provide a safe space so that when they come into this space, they have the village to support them. Because, as you said, right, like life is life, right? You got family, you got loved ones. I lost a lot of people. We lost a lot of people in the last 2 years, 7 and counting. You know what I'm saying? Some to gun violence. So dealing with those traumas, right, you need to just find a way to outlet. Like you need an outlet, right? So besides us leaning on each other, therapy, and also learning to just focus on my self-care, like slowing my life down. I'm going to school full time right now. That's another thing, right? I'm in school full time. I'm running an organization, and life is life. So what I'm learning is to try to find balance and just taking time to myself, turn off my phone, and just staying still. So sometimes that helps, right? And then the other things I mentioned, and just being a student of the game and being humble about it, man.
So as far as you said you had a nervous breakdown or mental breakdown, something, right? Was it a nervous breakdown?
A mental breakdown.
Mental breakdown. But we never really compounded upon that. So, all right, as far as that is concerned, right? Talk about that as far as being incarcerated. What does that do to your mental health? Like even being in solitary confinement, there's been research saying that I think like after like a couple days, like you kind of clinically start to deteriorate mentally, like especially some people being in the hole for 6 months, like 3 months at a time, like it's like you a lot of mental illness that comes from isolation, that comes from just being around men all day, that comes from having trauma of seeing people killed in front of you, stabbed in front of you, dealing with COs that abuse prisoners. Is a whole mental aspect of this. So we'll talk about the mental side effects of being incarcerated.
Yeah, so interestingly, segues into what I was talking about with the team. We're actually, for those who serve time, right? There's an article about the psychological impacts of prison, and we're all dissecting that article and identifying ourselves in it. So we're trying to build awareness of our trauma in order to overcome it. That's another thing, right? But the psychological impacts is deep, right? I could go on, right? But for me, part of what just feeling like the feeling
There he
like
goes.
um
EYO Espanol on the way.
so one of the concepts is that like when you have served so much time, right, you feel abnormal, right? You come out into this world, and I think part of my like urge with building a support group was to try to like be around like-minded people, because there's this like otherness, this concept of the other, right? It's a lot of African American scholars talked about being the other in the white man space, feeling like the outsider, the stranger. So the stranger concept is I walked with that a lot, right? Being in spaces where I did 13 years, so I'm around men talking about traveling, and they like, I just came from Dubai. You feel like so
Uncomfortable.
uncomfortable. You can't partake in the conversation. You can't relate, right? You don't, like, you just did your whole 13 years and your adult years in prison, right? So
Is there some level of embarrassment? Like you don't even want to tell people that you were incarcerated type? Like,
well, for me, some people do have that. They have this shame of their identity. I owned it from this gate. Like it became my advantage, actually, right? It became my currency because some people didn't know I served time, right? I might have been working when I was at the fashion production company. People like, oh, you did 13 years. I would have never knew. So like, I always didn't mind it, but some people are ashamed of where they came from. So they keep it deep down inside, but
the guy that, not to cut you off, the guy that runs Jordan Brand, you know his story?
nah.
So the guy that runs Jordan Brand, he killed somebody years ago, and he went to jail for it, but it was like a thing that nobody knew about. So he worked his way, obviously a very intelligent person. He worked his way up the corporate ladder to the point where he's the CEO of Jordan Brand, and it was something that it haunted him. Nobody knew about it. It was like a secret that nobody knew, and he like recently, like last year, 2 years ago, he wrote an article, and that was like him coming out and telling his past. But for 20 years, nobody knew his past history.
Yeah.
So it was one of these things, and like I said, he probably could have went to the grave with it, right? I guess it was before laws was so transparent, where everything was, it was probably like in the '60s or something. But he didn't feel comfortable living a double life. He felt like he just, like he had suppressed it and he was just hiding it for so long that even though nobody knew about it, it just was causing him anxiety because he knew about it and he wanted it to kind of get it off his chest.
Yeah, no, it's deep. Somehow I'm blessed, by the grace of God in that way where I was always okay with being vulnerable. You know what I'm saying? I think that we're so guarded when we come out, that we want to like protect this narrative, and it's like, nah, let people know who you are, right? So for me, I came home open to that, but I never really felt like my peoples understood me, right? So being a stranger, there's times where like I don't play with the hands. I was called too serious. Yo, loosen up, man. Like, you know what I mean? You mad like on something. And it's like, I just came from a hyper violent environment, right? So like, I can't just be flexible. And it took me time to like loosen up to new faces, trust issues, right? I was questioning everybody in my bros' circle, like, nah, like, because of my own trauma, people telling. So you start to generalize, and that's delusion, right? You start to think everyone is who you experienced. That's like literally delusion. And one of the biggest experiences I remember was being in barbershops, right? You know what I'm saying? You behind the chair getting a lineup, and one dude pulled up. He was a former cop. That's the funny part. Pulled up with a hoodie on, his hands in his pocket. I jumped up, dumb fast. You know what I mean? I just came home to a town that I took a life from, right? So those type of things where people don't understand your anxiety is the first time I hit in New York City to go to a contract, I seen like a herd of people, and it's reminding me of the yard. Like, people won't know what you're walking through. People walking past you, like, yo, you on super edge. So those moments made you feel abnormal. Like, it made you feel broken. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, what I learned was like accepting it, I'm scarred in that way, right? It's not really what happened, it's how I react to it, because I can't change the past now, right? It's how I move forward. But those type of things, man, are constantly walking with us. And I was just speaking at Pace University yesterday for the law school there, and I talked about the symbolic baggage of trauma that we all walk with on our backs, right? And I felt the heaviness of that trauma when I was in the school. You know what I'm saying? There was mad times I was in that school, bougie elite school, and I felt like I ain't belong. You know what I'm saying? It's like you feel like the stranger, and that feeling is an internal thing. You know what I'm saying? And to get even deeper, with your relationships, right? Some of us got like, issues with our family, our fathers, our moms, right? And if, I served so much time as a kid. So like, I learned that the impact that prison had on me was like the abandonment issue, right? I ain't see people for so long. So you have trust issues, in your relationships, you see it come out, right? And that's where you need an understanding partner, and you need to be aware of your own triggers, and the good thing when I was working with the Y under DCJS, like I got to understand trauma-informed practices and how to like really like let go some of the issues I was holding on to. So a lot of it is just letting go and understanding that it's there, right? A lot of us move into avoidance. A lot of men I know, even on my team, like you become so self-sufficient in prison that you come out here thinking you do everything by yourself. And I'm like, that's a trauma response, right? You don't realize you're not in prison no more, bro. You got the world out here. You got people to call. You know what I'm saying? We had a deep conversation the other day with a brother that just did from 16 to 39 years old, right? One of my guys, again, he identified somebody as a prospect for the organization. He's a Muslim brother. Again, diversity. We looking to diversify the team. He just did all this time. Solid brother up north. I actually know him. And beautiful experience was that he was not a prospect to serve. He needed to be a receiver. He needs to be a recipient. He's like, yo, I've been on 5 months and I'm like, struggling. I'm like trying to figure it out. He's like, I need help. And that might have been the first time he said that. Because for 5 months, he's like, I got to do this on my own. Like, there's this mindset that we have coming home from and it's because prison, makes you have to protect yourself and rely on yourself. I talk about 3 battles that we experience in prison. You battling against the correctional officers. That's a whole nother culture, right? Especially you up north, you around them white boys up north. Their culture's mad conservative, right? Then you battling with your peers, right? The segregation, the dog eat dog world, the back door, right? And then you battling with your own internal demons. You know what those 3 fights every day feel like? After many years, you come home and look at people different. Your friendships, you define them differently. A lot of my brothers that I like really feel my brothers is brothers who I did time with that's home now celebrating life with me, you know, despite my real brothers. But, you know, so it's like it changes your dynamic with people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, part of the growth is not only helping those who are returning, but preventing those from actually becoming incarcerated. So I know obviously you spoke about the why. Talk about impact and speaking to the youth, because as we see, especially here in New York City, and I mean, pick an inner city, like gang violence is at an all-time high.
Facts.
So talk about the mission that you're on in that aspect, because I mean, that's equally, if not even more important.
For sure, for sure. So, you know, we kind of categorize our work in two ways, right? The preventative services is what I'm gonna lean on in a second, and then the transformative work. So the transformative work is when we're going inside the correctional facilities. So right now we in Woodfield County Jail and working with youth coming out of OCFS state detention centers. The work that we do there is to try to inspire transformative thinking through programming. Like I mentioned, financial education is one of them, right? You know, giving them just a person to connect with who know that we're going to support them, showing up to court with them and all that, helping them like, yo, we want to see you win when you get out of here. Change that thinking. Because some of them never had that. They don't know what love is. Like, it's that deep, right? So, like, we trying to change how they view their relationships with people because they traumatized being in the hood all day, seeing violence. So going up in there and trying to change that narrative so that when they return home, they tap into our community. And that leads to the other program, the one step ahead part. And it's preventative in the sense that we trying to prevent them from going back. So that's giving them all the aspects of training from career readiness, education, financial, digital, and being a mentor to them while they transition, right? So any needs that they have upon their return, my team and myself are working on supporting those needs, just again so that they don't revert back. The preventative part is disrupting the school to prison pipeline, right? Disrupting the child welfare and prison pipeline, right? And when we're looking at the kids in the school, right, we're talking about these kids that are either gang influenced, because they're not really active, they just influenced. Then you got gang involved. Those are the hitters, right? Or the wannabe hitters, because some of them are involved in, you know. So our programming with the school is the preventative part. And what we've been doing is sending in a team to these different schools. We introduce the work that we do. And then most times the youth show actual interest and they want to sign up. And the teachers are always baffled, like, yo, how y'all get them to be interested? I'm like, because they never met somebody who did 13 years that cares about them, right? They see like, oh, this is who my uncle did time. Now we relate to them in a different way. And then what we do with them is we try to work with the guardians, right? Provide the parent support and then work with the youth and getting them into programming, right? Whether it's a workshop, whether it's a coaching session around something that they want to learn. Sometimes we sponsor programs. If they like, we give them an incentive. Like, look, you like music? My brother owns a studio, right, called the Hub Studio in Yonkers, right? So we send kids there on our dollar to pay for their studio time, keep them off the streets. But while they're in there, we educating them, working with them, building with them, right? And showing them that we care, then working with the guardian. The goal is that our community, right, underserved or under-resourced, lacks that support mechanism from people that look like them. That's where the one-on-one of us coming in at, right? We're grassroots. So as a nonprofit, we're born from the community, we come from the community. So people understand us, they know my story, a lot of people, you know, and they know my team's story. So when we show up at your doorstep, it's like a different situation, right, than CPS showing at your doorstep. You know what I'm saying? So the preventative part is, again, just trying to work with them, getting them out of gang culture. You know what I'm saying? We're working on keeping them out of the streets. Sometimes it's not that easy and clean. Sometimes they 1 foot all the way in and an arm into our world, right? We're trying to, like, that's the battle because they're really caught up, right? So our work is to be consistent, be authentic, and walk along their journey one day at a time, and with the hope that we continue showing them options and expose them to resources that could take them away. You know, so our thing is, and then by default, talking about gun violence prevention, we start mediating conflicts, right? Like, I might have one youth that knows another youth that's actually really happened. And one youth commented on somebody's page online on IG is like the source of all war right now. And then one youth called me like, yo, bro, out of line. Now I'm involved, mediating like, yo, hold on, relax. And I appreciated him from doing that because he's all the way outside. He could have just handled that the way he wanted to, but he realized that we available. See, that's also sometimes it's not that deep. Just being available for the young boy to call like, yo, I really want to make this move, but I know he with us, man. Yo, talk to him. Now we're talking to him and he like, yo, you right, I wilded out. He's taking that down and now that situation is mediated. A life, two lives were saved right there. Right? So through the mentorship, you have mediation happening. Then the goal is to get them into education-based programming to change their thinking. And that's an ongoing process.
So how can people help if they want to donate, or what's the
For sure, for sure. So you can find us on all social media platforms. We have a website, www.914united.org. There's a donate button there. If you want to reach out to us directly and have a meeting with us before you want to donate, you could reach us at info@914united.org. We have, again, social media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. DM us, shoot out to us, to find different ways of payment methods. But if you want to go direct to our online, on our website,
So is it to expand further than 914, or you just want to focus on Westchester?
Great point. Right now, I need a full-time staff. There's 13 of us. I mentioned the breakdown earlier, right? Mm-hmm. So we looking to, one, secure the full-time staff, build quality, right, and focus on the quality here in Westchester. Because we've been offered to go to Rikers Island. We've been offered to go to the city, but there's a whole nother landscape out there. The money look different. There's a lot of political stuff going on. So my goal is to really, conquer Westchester, right? We have a lot of villages in Westchester. You know what I mean? It's a lot.
So what areas do you focus on? Obviously, Yonkers, Mount Vernon.
We have youth that come out of Newburgh, Mount Vernon, Yonkers, some in Peekskill, New Rochelle. We have very few youth in New Rochelle. We got one on our caseload now, and some in the Northeast Bronx now, right? That we have coming to us.
Like North Mount Vernon.
Yeah, for sure. So that's where we at, right? But then we get called out to Mount Kisco. They want to do work in there. Portchester, there's another need in Portchester, and again, I turn situations down because I can't chase the money because it's there. We need to focus on home. Mm-hmm. So right now, with our location in Yonkers, Central Park Avenue, 2025, we're doing a grand opening April 26th, and it's to really let people know that we planted our flag. And we're going to start launching mad programs. So the other part I really want to highlight is the linkage between those institutions I talked about, Woodfield, County Jail, OCFS, a direct linkage from there to our office, right? We're doing that. We was doing it in a more decentralized way where we met them in the park, at their house, at the restaurant because we didn't have a location. Now we want to make sure that they have a direct access to our space and get their education going. And that basically continuing the mentorship program that we started. So I want to focus on Yonkers youth, primarily, but also because the county's so diverse and the program we work with in the county is the YOP program, the Youth Defender Program. We want to make sure that pipeline is clear and clean before we replicate that pipeline with the other parts of the general population.
Well, keep up the good work, man. Definitely, a lot of education and it's definitely important because, it's needed work. You look at the gang violence right now, it's exploding. And it's one of these things that nobody really has an answer for, except for the people that's actually on the ground and have been through it. They can be, credible messengers to try to, provide a different way, mediate situations and give the kids a different outlet as opposed to just, something that's going to give them 30 years in jail.
100%.
So definitely keep up the great work, man. Appreciate you coming.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm sure we'll be connecting soon.
Yeah, for sure. Continue that discussion.
Yeah, for sure. Congrats on the opening too.
Yeah, man.
914.
914 United. For sure, brother. We here putting on for the city.
For sure. So thank you guys for rocking with us. We'll see you next week. Peace.
Hey.